Hello and welcome to the third episode of the intro to Kdenlive. If you haven't seen them yet, make sure to watch parts 1 and 2. They will be over here in the side of the video all the time. So last time we talked about creating your first video using Kdenlive. We talked about cutting the end off your video, making cuts within the video, moving some things around, things like that. Today we're going to be talking about combining two clips and using transitions. Alright, so as per our usual, we're going to go ahead and open up Kdenlive. You see here we've got the slightly modified layout that I use. And what you're going to need now are at least 2 video clips. You can do this with 3, 4, 10, doesn't matter how many you want to put together. Now you can either add them by clicking the Add Clip, or you can pull it up within Nautilus, within Dolphin if you're in KDE, and just drag files in. Now this just happens to be the intro to Kdenlive part 2 that I worked on for last week. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the video from my camcorder, the output from the screencast that I did, and drag them both in. You see they both show up. It's actually building the thumbnail. Now there is a slight bug I've noticed with this version of Ubuntu that for some reason when I transcode from the original OGV file that I've captured, you see here's my original capture, it's 107 megs, it's actually 14.5 minutes. When I go to the output video, it's 44 minutes. For some reason, it's taking the original file and it's adding so much extra stuff to the end that's not actually there. But either way, you may not want to use the entire clip. What you can do, of course, is from here you can just take and drag the entire clip into the timeline. You can do the same thing with the other one. You see, this is so long, and I don't actually want all that. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and make a cut right here as the audio ends, then I'll switch back over and delete this extra out, so I'm down to about 14 minutes and 40 seconds, about where it should be. But still, that's really long. But what I want to do instead is just take a portion of that clip and insert it. So here is the timeline for the clip. You can select any portion of that timeline. See, I actually went beyond the scope of the file itself, but I'm going to take something from this first 15 minutes. I'll put a little marker here to signify this is the beginning of it, and a marker there to signify that that's the end point. And now if I drag from the clip here to the timeline, it just pulls that little section out. And as you see, it's still kind of long, but not too long. It's about 2.5 minutes. And now I can do the same thing with this clip, or I can take the whole thing and drag it in. So I'll go ahead and just drag it in here and put it right at the end of the other one. So now I have a 4.5 minute video that a portion of it is the screencast I did and a portion of it is from my camcorder. Now the problem with that is, and it's not necessarily a problem for everybody, but when you get to the end of this first video, wherever you want to in the middle, do your it jumps really harshly to the next video. Now that's not always a problem, like I said. I mean, in my case I actually do a lot of jump cuts, but for a lot of people they don't like that. So what you can do to fix that, to avoid that, is put your second video on the second line. Now you can do this over and over again. You can keep adding new tracks that are video tracks, and you can have 50, 100, however many video tracks you want to have. That all depends on your computer power. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to overlap these just a little bit to make what's called a transition between two files. You see here when I mouse over the corner of this first video clip, it gives me a little green arrow. And if I click on that, you see it says Add Transition. It puts a little yellow box here. Let's zoom in to make it a little easier to see. Now that little yellow box says Dissolve. That's one way you can do it. When I click on the yellow box, you see there's actually a transition window up here that has a whole list of transitions you can go through. Now the most common ones that I use personally are Dissolve and Composite. Dissolve, you see, is the default selection. Now what you'll also want to make sure to do, if you're going from one to the other, you have to select Reverse. What that does is it says take the first one and dissolve into the second, rather than taking the second and dissolve into the first. But you'll see here at the beginning of the transition, the second one starts to show up and dissolve into place over the first one. And I'm just frame stepping through this, and there you go. It dissolves from the screencast into the other. Now you can change it from dissolve into any one of these other transitions. You see here we've got the slide transition, and you'll want to invert it because again you're doing the top to the bottom. And if you see, if I walk through here, through this slide transition now, it's going to start sliding my camcorder onto the screen over top of whatever I'm doing. A lot of people call this a wipe. Apparently Kdenlive treats it as though it's its own transition type. There are, of course, the transition type of wipe that you can use, which has a whole bunch of different wipes that it can do. The slide being just one of them. Now one thing I've noticed when I'm using the wipe transition, I actually need to move the one that I'm wiping from to the bottom. And all these things are draggable, so it's pretty easy to take care of. Now if I take this and walk through it again, you see it does this bilinear wipe from the bottom to the top, and it just wipes through to the next scene, whatever you've got. You can change that to any one of these, whatever you want it to be. I know a lot of people use like radial bars or burst. These are the like America's Funniest Videos things, the type of wipes that have been around for years and years, and everybody hates them. So I'm still going to show you how to do it because there's no reason not to. You see here I'm doing the burst pattern. You can actually put softness on it so that instead of looking all harsh like that, it does a very smooth looking one, but still they look kind of trashy to me. But that's really about all there is to say about wipes. Basically a wipe is a transition that goes from one video to another using a pattern of some sort. Not generally preferred. You can also download new wipes like I mentioned before. So you've got the page curl and all these other different things, bar transition, swirls. If I just go ahead and download this swirl, and now it's installed, I click close, I click on my wipe transition, and there should be a new spiral in here. Now if I go through it again, it's going to do this really nasty looking spiral. And there we go, it's spiraled out to me. Just so you can see it at full speed, I'm going to go ahead and play that for you. In the middle, do your there you go. Now, a lot of these other transitions I have absolutely no experience with because in the 4 or 5 months that I've been making videos, the only ones I've ever had to use are composite and dissolve. Because for one thing, like I said, people hate wipes and slides, and for another thing, a lot of them just don't work like they're supposed to. For example, if I select, let's say, blend. Blend doesn't really appear to do anything. You know, it's got this blend transition and nothing is happening. I can just walk through it and nothing. Now if I select, let's say, burn. Burn looks really funny. It doesn't really look like it's doing what it's supposed to do. And there you go. It burned it. So yeah, I would pretty much suggest sticking to composite and dissolve. If you know anything about the other ones, feel free to mention it. But they all seem like they're pretty much not terribly useful to me. Okay, so now you should know how to put two clips together, how to transition between one and the other using a transition within Kdenlive, and overall you should start becoming a little bit more comfortable with using the timeline. That's all for this episode of the Intro to Kdenlive. Make sure to come back next time. We're going to be talking about effects. As always, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.